Vikings postgame coverage continues now with Vikings Overtime on FM 100.3 KFAN and the Fan Radio Network. Vikings Overtime is presented by Xfinity, Profile by Sanford, TimberTech, Carboni's Pizzeria, the Hair Restoration Institute, and by Honda. Now with more postgame coverage of today's Vikings game, here's the fans, Eric Nordquist, AJ Mansour, and Paul Lambert.
What's happening, sports fans? Meat Sauce here for Vikings Overtime. Nordo and AJ are back at the studio, but I am here at US Bank Stadium, and I think this is just as quiet right now as it was when Alexander Mattison dropped that ball. AJ and Nordo, how are you guys?
Hey, man, we're great.
Yeah, still recovering from that game. My goodness.
That's one of those games where I said it before the game with Rosie, and I've said it all week on the Power Trip. That was the Vikings Bowling Green game, whereas Guardsy, because not Guardsy, but just the Gophers have any excuse when they don't play well. But the Vikings, that was it. If they win by 20, they're supposed to win by 20. If they lose, it's over, and if they win like they did, there are fans that are furious. All those callers on Fan Line. I mean, that was about as bad as it could get when they were up. What? They were up 17-6 with 3 minutes left, and then everything fell apart, and they're running, wildcat plays, and they're not going for it with time left in the second before the second half. It was one of the weirdest Vikings games, and for both of you, obviously both comment, it felt like a loss.
Yeah, it didn't feel good. When we look back at this and we kind of say, okay, what is this going to be the turning point? And it really depends on what the team does with this, right? I mean, we've seen seasons where the Greg Lewis play kind of turned that season around. That's a different team, different situation, but that Greg Lewis play in the back of the end zone against the 49ers was the catalyst to really that season, and that they went on a run after that game, and they really turned it into something. And I feel like this could kind of be that situation where what do they do next week? What do they do out of the bye? They're not a good out of the bye team. What do they do against a good Dallas Cowboys team on Sunday Night Football? If they can rattle off a couple wins, you're going to look at this and you're going to say Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins fighting on the sideline was the amped up hype that they needed at that moment, and they couldn't have got it if they won this game by 20. And we're going to look back and say this was the turning point. They did it here. Now, if it goes the other way, this is just going to be one of those games where you just elongated the displeasure with the coach. You delayed. I mean, this could have been the coach's job if they lost that game today, and this may just delay it if they go on and just end up below 500, miss the playoffs, and whatever goes there. Nordo, I know that you have mixed feelings on this too, man. I mean, it's a weird deal when they win this game.
Yeah, and the Bowling Green analogy, first of all, I mean, just spectacular, Saucy.
Thank you.
Well done.
As you continue.
Yeah, I think it's the best analogy I've ever had, and I think it's the hardest I've worked on anything for this job in a long time.
You're the true soothsayer, and
I don't know what that means.
I'm just curious what site you read that from.
No, I'm not kidding you. I came up with that on my own.
No,
if you do want
did.
to do the show on your own, you can do it.
Hey, why don't you climb out of the booth and help them pick up around in those?
Well,
in those
eventually that's
rows.
what I'll be doing when they fire me from here.
No, but you were absolutely correct, and that was kind of my own mental consensus conclusion coming into the game is anything short of just a lopsided ass kicking that we deliver to a winless team wasn't going to be good enough. And coming into today, so to AJ's point, like this can be something. I don't know if it'll be this as much as now go to Carolina and win. Like if you go into the bye and you're 3-3, you're still looking back wondering what the hell happened. But in the same sense, you go out of the bye week with a 500 record, and now it's okay. The really tough part of the schedule begins, and you just move forward through the season. But with all that said, as of today, everyone that called in during Fan Line, anybody going, being apoplectic and nuclear on social media, anybody just screaming, pulling their hair out and pissed off at this team, they're completely valid in all of that. And what we watched today, again, the weird feeling of being excited about seeing Greg Joseph hit that kick, but simultaneously wondering just what the hell this disgusting display was that we watched in person at US Bank Stadium for 3 hours, kind of the duality of those two forces meeting. Happy about a win, awful performance. I left the stadium and AJ and I came here for overtime. I was pissed off.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so frustrating to me now through 5 games where, the offense was cooking through the first couple of weeks, some penalty issues, get you the loss in Cincinnati. You get the missed kick. You do everything you can to win that game in Arizona. And then there's almost this rebirth for a moment when you get the lopsided double-digit victory against the Seahawks. Everything's cool. And now the offense has completely gone through the floor. Defense, in some ways, the score, I think, is somewhat deceiving when you see this rush defense giving up chunks. 3rd and long defense is disastrous. Once again, a couple of long conversions on 3rd and double digits for the Lions today. Happens every single freaking week.
Yeah.
The decision-making in spots, letting the clock drain down at the end of the first half. You mentioned that. From a decision-making standpoint, execution standpoint, none of this looks good right now. So you're 2-3, you got the win. And I heard, last call of Fan Line, I think it was, he's like, hey, can you remind people that we won? Absolutely. Vikings won the game. There'll be some sort of positive montage 9 to noon. They improve in the record column. That's great. But anybody that watched this game today and has big expectations for a team with this talent at this stage of the coach's tenure should be pissed off at what they saw today, should be pissed off at what they've seen through 5 weeks this season.
I think the thing that, and Nordo, I think you nailed it, is we watched this football team, and they, as Pete kept saying on the broadcast, they just kept letting this Lions team hang around. There's no killer instinct in this team, and I think you said it with Corey earlier. They haven't scored an offensive touchdown in the second half since week 1.
Yeah,
that's horrible.
That?
And we talked, AJ and I talked about it a little bit on Friday. If Baker Mayfield can complete passes, that's a 31-7 win for the Browns.
Totally agree.
And they this whole team, every time they're out there, it's like let's just get to the end of the game. Let's not dagger anybody. Let's not offend anybody. Let's not run over people. They haven't had their best player. I get that. But they've been lucky to sneak out with today's win. The defense in those last 2 plays before they kicked the field goal to win the game by Detroit is just hideous. But with that being said, you needed Kirk Cousins to drive the ball down the field, and for the first time, all the vitriol and hate for this team isn't at the quarterback, AJ.
Yeah, I mean, it is a different feeling, right? I mean, we're at a point in the tenure of the coach, maybe of the general manager, where it's make or break. Every week we mention this report that they have to make the playoffs, or it could be the job for the coach. That's going to be here the entirety of this season. That's where the fans are at. There's no more, built up equity that Mike Zimmer has, because especially when the defense is not playing as great. Don't be fooled by the low number of points that they're allowing, because they're kind of doing it against teams that are not good or are missing opportunities like the Browns did last week. So that equity is gone. You have the opportunity now where everybody's frustrated by the play calling, the game management, the decision making. And, we've gone through how many offensive coordinators with Kirk Cousins at the helm? I think every year he's been here, it's been a different one. So what is that, 4 or 5 years?
I think you're right.
It goes back even further than Kirk with Norv and DiFilippo and, those other opportunities there. There's just something that's just weird and something that is frustrating. And at the end of the day, that's just, whether it's his fault or not, that's going to fall on the head coach, right? We can't get rid of the offensive coordinator anymore. We've done that, whether it's a promotion or whether it's a firing or whatever.
Yeah, you're right.
We've done that for 5 years. And the next thing is Mike Zimmer. So if that's going to be the opportunity, that's the one that all the fans are putting their heads towards and their tweets towards and their calls and everything there. So that's where that comes from. Now, you guys talk about your best player being off the field. The 2 games that this team has won this year have been without Dalvin Cook on the football field. Now, none of us are going to argue that they're a better football team with Alexander Mattison than with Dalvin Cook in there. But does that mean that simply we just need to open up the playbook? It comes to these moments in the 2-minute drives where Kirk is getting stuff done finally, but there's the whole half, Nordo, where they just didn't do anything.
Yeah, what I thought, to be honest with you, based on the first half, what we were seeing with the one-on-one opportunities, and Justin Jefferson was getting open on every single play.
5 catches, 104 yards.
And they may not even be hyperbole. I'd have to go back and watch every snap. But Justin Jefferson was getting open on every single play. And we even saw it a week ago against the Browns in spots where Justin Jefferson 1v1, that was the focal point of Kirk, and that was when we saw I guess some, you could call it some semblance of an explosive offense taking place. We didn't see any of that in the second half. Can't speak to whatever adjustments were made. Thielen on the verge of having a catchless day for the first time in 2 seasons until late in the game. That was kind of weird. Tyler Conklin didn't have a lot of activity today. Something's up with the play calling. The honeymoon is over for Clint. And, I wouldn't even be mad at the lack of continuity from the offense. I mean, from Stefanski in 2019 to even Gary Kubiak last year, you did see an evolution not only in Kirk's game, but the overall offense. So you're switching people in and out, but you're still seeing success offensively. I think everyone would agree last year defense is really what spoke to that 7-9 record overall. But this year right now, something's up. And I don't know what it is, and I personally don't think it has anything to do with Dalvin Cook being in or out of the game. There's no explosion to this offense. Right. I love seeing Kirk getting the ball in Justin Jefferson's hand, and just by nature of his athleticism and his game breaking ability, he'll turn 12 yards into 20. That's awesome. But I mean taking shots and actually taking risks in this offense. And so whatever that marriage is, and coming into the season, I was kind of curious about that. Like at this stage, Kirk is now going to be working with a first time OC. And in some ways, Kirk's been here, Kirk would be, it's similar to LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers, right? There's kind of that point, like you don't tell the sheriff how to do things. You work with the sheriff to make sure that everything's good with how he wants to do it. And Kirk's certainly no Rodgers or Peyton Manning, but this was an opportunity for Kirk maybe to have more autonomy in the offense. I don't know if that's the case. Whatever the play calling scheme is, how much is Zimmer doing in terms of coming and clomping in and maintaining some sort of conservative scheme or philosophy in the mix at times. This situational decision making is terrible. Not taking risks, not taking shots. This offense is wasting a lot of talent on the field, and it's putting us in these spots where we're sweating a 54-yard field goal to beat a winless, in some ways, talent deficient in the biggest way Detroit Lions team. Again, the frustration is through the charts for me.
Yeah, I think, Nordo, everything you said is perfect. And I think kind of goes back to what AJ said, too. I think there's a little bit of fear with Kubiak. I think that we saw with DeFilippo, I mean, how many weeks did he last before they canned him?
I think it was 13. It was the... He almost got canned, I think, after the Patriots game, if you remember that, because Dalvin had 9 or 7 yards a carry, and he only got like 8 carries on the game or something like that. And then the Seattle game happens. He gets fired after the Seattle game, week 13 or 14, and then Stefanski was the guy.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. I think there's some fear here with calling poor plays, and I think it's conservative because it's the easiest way to keep the coach happy. If they're out there gunslinging it and they're throwing bad interceptions, like the one that he had, didn't it bounce off of somebody? That's not really Kirk's fault. Right. But it was a very conservative play call all day by Kubiak, and I just think that that's the MO for them. That, hey, and you said it, Nordo, Kirk has been here a while. Obviously, Mike has been here a long time, so I just don't want to get in anyone's way by calling big plays that may get them in trouble. But even to last week against the Browns, it's just they come out here and it's like, all right, we're going to go we'll go maybe 4 plays and punt, basically, or we'll go 3 plays and punt, or it's just bad. They don't go down the field. They had every time they threw to Justin Jefferson, he was wide open, and they go away from that. I don't know why they just don't exploit how bad this Lions defense actually is, and not just, I think Jefferson had over 100 yards with like 4 minutes into the second quarter. Right. How do they not just keep going to that? They don't. So what did they do? As I just said, they let bad teams hang around, and eventually that's going to come back to bite you. And it almost did today. If they lose that game, I think Mike Zimmer is on his way out tomorrow. I think 2-4 going into the bye week, if they lose next week, might be it. I just think that people watching this are going, this team is horrific. They have no punch in the second half. There's no halftime adjustments. Everything that worked in the first half, we never go back to. And Madison giving up the ball, I know isn't Mike's fault, but you just go to the ground and punt.
It should have been a game at that point.
Right, correct. Right. You let your defense You go to the ground, let them punt and let your defense take over and play. It's Jared Goff. Let them take the ball at the 25 and try and score a touchdown. It was a weird all-around day in the end. As everybody is tweeting, AJ, because you know it, you follow it, how ironic is it that a kicker might have saved Mike Zimmer's job?
Well, I'm kind of glad you made that transition there, because
it's true.
I sit here and I listen to you guys, throw these things out and throw this diagnosis of the offense and the halftime adjustments and the decision making, and something jumped out at me where it almost feels like when Mike Zimmer, as the head coach, right, he oversees everything. His focus is the defense. That's his expertise. That's what he has his hands on every day at practice, but he oversees everything, right? So you have a conversation with an offensive coordinator. You bring him in. You say, this is your offense. I bring in your scheme. I like what you did here. Do what you did on this team and bring it over here. We have these players. Do this and do that. Well, as soon as adversity hits, Mike Zimmer seems to have a short fuse and a short decision-making opportunity. When we saw Daniel Carlson in that situation, we've seen it with, potentially some situations that, again, whether we still don't know exactly what happened with Norv behind the scenes, but there seems to be a moment where if the offense doesn't do well, he then sticks his hand into that cookie jar and wants it to go a certain way. And we've heard it in the press conferences before. And Paul, you mentioned the Dalvin Cook thing. If the offense is cooking, but he doesn't think Dalvin gets enough carries and they end up losing that game, that's the focal point of the press conference.
Correct.
We got to get the ball to Dalvin more. We got to do this. We got to do that. And I just wonder if he is frustrating to behind the scenes when you get an opportunity there, because he makes knee-jerk decisions and knee-jerk reactions maybe, and we can see that when it comes to halftime adjustments. They don't make halftime adjustments because I think that they hunker down. I think that they're if they were doing something out there in the first half and it didn't go perfect, then they get a little opinion from someone in the behind the scenes that says maybe, hey, let's get back to the conservative game plan. Let's do this. Let's do that. It seems like that's the trend that we see for the 8-year, the head coaching career of Mike Zimmer.
Yeah, I am interested in part of that. I think where you have, and maybe that was the case with Norv a handful of years ago. I don't think that was the case with Gary. I think that there was some separation there.
Right.
And there was some, and frankly, those are two of the best offensive seasons that the Vikings have had in quite a while. So Gary had the ability to handle his business, even Kevin Stefanski, I should say, in 2019. Now with Clint, it's different. And I don't know, I can only assume, like, Gary's not in the building, but they're doing, there's some father to son and vice versa communication taking place maybe over the course of the week. And, we saw it through the Seattle game. So the first 3 weeks of the season, you saw a Vikings offense that was incredibly well versed at whatever the scripted nature is. Early in games, if we're putting our best plays together, fast start with the offense, we saw that. And so that was kind of, and especially after the Seattle game, it was like, wow, like this offense is popping. And we're not seeing the drop off, if there was any that was anticipated, with Clint jumping into those shoes. And one of those games with the Seattle game was without Dalvin. So, without Dalvin in the mix, he still found a way to be effective and successful with Alexander Mattison. Now, something has happened the last two games. And I can look at the Browns game in some ways and just say, first of all, that Browns defense is really good. Mm-hmm. And you might have just gotten out-coached by Stefanski, Joe Woods, and that coaching staff over there. I don't know what the hell this was.
Right.
And that's really concerning to me.
And I don't know how you watch that team play football, the Lions, and watch the tape of the game, the week one, although they came back and played well against the 49ers, but they gave up a ton of points in that game. You just watch this Lions team and how bad this defense is, and you don't expose some of this. It was just so weird. How does Adam Thielen not try and get a catch until the second or third play before the end of the game? How does that happen?
Was weird.
That was so weird. You can't tell me that they've got these all-pro corners. They're down at every position. They have no pass rush. They have nothing on the field, this team. They're just a bad football team. They try hard. They never quit. You can say that about Dan Campbell. That's something that, that team does have, and that's why the fact that they let them hang around. But I don't know how you don't just expose that team through the air. I know you have to know at least last night or Friday or Thursday that Dalvin probably won't play. So why not line them up 3 wide and just chunk them down the field? It worked with Jefferson. They never went back to it. It's just a boring style of football. And I know they're without their best player. It's boring to watch. And all 3 of us were here. People are throwing paper airplanes in the third quarter because they're so bored with this football team. It was really bad to watch. And this crowd was so right for them to lose. They're booing when Alexander Mattison fumbles that ball. That's how bad it got here at US Bank Stadium.
For me, it's about taking shots. There's something that's either happening, whether it's the coordinator on his own, is it in concert with the head coach? It's when every play has to go right. And I do want to get into something, by the way. At one point, whether it was Zimmer or somebody mentioned that before the half, they may have wanted to go forward offensively, but they just wanted to run the ball first to see how it worked.
That's not how it works.
No, that was it's just It was a terrible answer. But to that end, like, something's up there with how they're organizing the offense. And the problem is when you're not taking risks and you're not trying to push the ball downfield, and every single play has to be every single drive needs to be a 14-play drive. That leaves a lot open for mistakes. That leaves a lot open to stall and punt. And I think it's more, if you have one drive where you hit on a 50-yard play, or you have 2 drives where you get there and ultimately punt both times, you've gained the same number of yards, but one of them resulted in points. And that not being so risk averse in some ways and opening this offense could take a ton of pressure, whether it's off the O-line in some respects, specifically with Alexander Mattison in this run game. And by the way, Dalvin, he had a great week at Arizona. Dalvin, in the stints that we've seen him thus far, part of it related to ankle, he hasn't been off to a fantastic start overall. So Kirk has truly been the lifeblood of this offense in 2021, and I think to put a governor on what they're able to do and not trying to get explosive, I think is really inhibiting this offense. And it couldn't be more mind-numbingly frustrating to watch it when, if we're just going to try and get them at 6 yards of play, I mean, buckle up, because this is going to be a long, long, brutal season.
Yeah, and the other thing too, Nordo, when they're running, on 3rd and 4, they're running snaps to the halfback, and they're on 3rd and 8, they're running 4-yard outs, and Pete and I were talking about it. Like, what are they doing? Why is it 3rd and 16 or 2nd and 16 and you're running like a screenplay, and then all of a sudden that doesn't work? So we'll run somebody on a crosser for 6 yards when it's 4th and 10 or 3rd and 7. What are you doing? Like, it's just every play that they run seems like Kubiak is up here not wanting to make a major mistake because he's afraid he'll lose the job, or he's been scolded so much by the head coach that it's not going to work out that way. It's a weird dynamic for the play calling.
Playing scared.
Yes, correct. We'll take a break here. Your Minnesota Vikings win, although it doesn't feel like it. They win 19-17 over the Lions. Greg Joseph hits a 54-yard field goal to seal it. There's a ton of stuff going around the league. We'll talk about that, and we'll also talk more about how this win feels more like a loss. I wanted to say it was a loss because that's how it felt here. It's me, it's Nordo, it's AJ Mansour with Vikings Overtime right here on.
On 1st and 10 from the Vikings 23, feigns a handoff to DeAndre Swift, and now he's sacked by Everson Griffin. Everson Griffin, playing in his 20th game against the Detroit Lions, now has 17 sacks against these kiddies. 3rd this year for Everson. It's a loss of 8, 2nd and 18.
That's the voice of the Vikings, Paul Allen. The Minnesota Vikings win 19-7 over the now 0-5 Lions, who, as I bring AJ and Nordo back into the conversation, that's a really bad football team, but there's one thing that the Lions and I don't have in common. When the going gets tough, they don't quit, and they didn't quit all day.
It's kind of reminiscent of, remember a year ago, the win list. We had just one win at the time. I think we were 1-3, 1-4 actually. And the winless Atlanta Falcons came to town, and they put 40 on us, and you just saw them cheering and just losing their minds. Their bench erupted over there. And it was just like the dark cloud that was covering them was gone, and there was just this sense of jubilation over there. I was seeing that exact moment play out as they got that 2-point conversion. And, you were in the booth with us, Saucy. It was kind of like, that was kind of the no-brainer bit, right? Like, once they scored that touchdown, they had to go for 2.
Correct.
It's a winless thing. Come in, get out of here with a victory. And, thanks to Greg Joseph, the Vikings improved to 2-3. But I was having visions of that Atlanta game last year where, at so many times throughout that game and certainly the season in totality, it's like, this isn't making sense. Like, this is not supposed to happen. You felt so helpless as a Vikings fan watching that defense conceding third down conversions, yards and chunks, offense, mistakes in certain spots and all of that. And now over the last couple of games, we've kind of watched all of that taking place at once. And it's been incredibly disappointing. And, chatting about it last week when I was there at the stadium and we were both helping clean up the club areas in front of the radio booth there, picking up the trash. We were talking about this, and it was like, if you just isolated that Browns game without thinking about the first 2 weeks of the season, it's like, okay, in some ways you could explain losing to Stefanski, losing to the Browns, and losing to, having trouble with a great defense and all of those things. And in a vacuum, the Browns loss kind of makes sense. But it's not in a vacuum. It's part of a story. And through these 5 games, even today, despite a victory, still got to remind people Vikings improved to 2-3, but it kind of feels like a loss to me just as a hardcore fan that is still having trouble with everything that I'm seeing on a weekly basis.
A couple of things, AJ, before we get your thoughts. It's Quandre Diggs, right?
Yeah, he just got another one.
He is his 6th interception on the season. And Derek Carr, I think, just got knocked out of the Vegas game. So if you have Derek Carr on your fantasy team, there's one person you can blame. That's Chris Hockey.
Oh, man, the hockey curse continues.
Yes, correct.
Quandre, are you talking about Trayvon Diggs?
Trayvon Diggs.
That guy, yeah.
Quandre Diggs, I think, is a safety for the Seahawks. But Trayvon Diggs, I mean, Stefan's little bro.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
He is so damn good.
He has 6 interceptions already.
Was he a first-round pick?
I think so, yeah. Out of Bama, right?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I just know we've drafted a lot of corners recently.
Yeah, we didn't need him.
Trayvon.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the thing that sums up today is if you watch people leave U.S. Bank Stadium, it felt like a loss. I think there were, I know I speak for myself, but I think there were some Vikings fans and even the people that called into Fan Line that were hoping that they lost. Because then, we've talked about it all week. You lose to this team, you're what, 1-4? That's when the hot seat basically is turned up to 11, and it doesn't get any cooler because you just fall back on, we lost as a 10-point favorite to the Lions, who at the end of this may win 2 or 3 games. I mean, we saw today out on the field the number 1 or number 2 overall team picking in next year's draft, but it would have been a really bad loss. It's also a really bad win, if that makes any sense.
No, it is. And I think when you look at the 2 teams on the football field today, you have Lions fans who I think can be a little excited, about what is coming in the future. Maybe they made some good decisions. Maybe, they don't have the talent to compete right now. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. But they have a coach who will go for it, a coach who will go all out for his team. You have a couple pieces that maybe could be a part of that future team. And you have an opportunity where you almost went into an opponent's home and walked away with a victory. When you're the Minnesota Vikings, you walk away with that victory and you look at it and you say, okay, what do we have to build on outside of that win? Outside of that win for the rest of the season, what do we have to build on? I don't think you feel good about anything. The defense didn't necessarily play great. They continued hemorrhaging yards on the ground. I think 4.5 yards per carry. They're up at about 5 per carry on the season. They let a team get back into this. We don't feel good about the offensive play calling. We don't feel great about the defensive play calling. We could pick apart almost every player on this team across both sides of the football outside of Kirk Cousins, and even he hasn't played as good as he did the first 3 games, these last 2 games. It just kind of gets you to a point where when you talk ball about maybe wanting this team to win, you're looking for hope. And if change is made, if that loss happens, we could have change. And if change is made, that means that there's something around the horizon that's going to be different. And when you don't know what that is, you have hope for it.
Correct. And Norda, before we get your thoughts, if roles are reversed and the Vikings pick up that ball, because, DeAndre Swift fumbles it, the Vikings pick up the ball, go in for that score, and they're down 100 times out of 100, Mike Zimmer kicks the extra point.
Of course he
you
does.
say you say what you want about Dan Campbell and the eating the kneecaps and all that, and that stuff's weird, whatever. He loves those players,
right.
And he knows what are we going to do? I'm not going to overtime here in US Bank Stadium. I want to win now. Mike Zimmer never does that. And for all the people that are listening going, it's just maybe time is up. It's been 8 years and it's 1990s football we see. You see it all the time, AJ. You play fantasy football in order. You do as well. No one kicks anymore on fourth down. Everyone goes for it. We rarely do that. And anytime we have an opportunity, like we had with 44 seconds left in the second quarter, we just hand the ball off when all they have done is burn their corners for 100-plus yards from JJ. They don't do anything. When that at the end of the game, even if you kick a field goal there, the game's over. When you don't have to get into this weird stuff that they always get into, they put themselves in awful positions by not having any killer instinct.
Well, and they avoided disaster by getting the win.
100%. Yes.
It depends, I guess, what side you're on. You avoid disaster by getting a win. But this was also the first opportunity where this season where there wasn't a weird fluky thing that you could blame on the refs or you could blame on somebody else. This was all them. I mean, they did not come to play today. Even in the first half when things were clicking, they just didn't have that killer instinct. They settled for field goals against a team where you should get 7 every single time. And this was on them. I mean, this is... You need a gut check. You need to look in the mirror after this game and decide whether or not this is going to be a catalyst or whether this is just what it is. And I fear that, and I don't know why, I can't diagnose exactly why it is. You could blame coaches, you could blame players, you could blame schemes. There's just something about this team. They don't have it. They don't have that killer instinct. And I don't have any confidence, Nordo, that they're going to get it at any point, whether they win on a walk-off like this or they go to Carolina and win next week.
Yeah, right now I don't have any confidence that this will just turn around instantaneously or slowly. Now, I will say this, there's some recency bias to the way that we're feeling about this, right? Because the game just happened and it was dreadful. So that's all in the mix here. Because if the team was to, as AJ says, use this as a catalyst and then make the playoffs, then we'll look back and this was a win on the schedule. And we might even joke back about, if we advance in the playoffs, we'd be like, whew, remember when they almost had to fire Zimmer after that Lions game? Like, ooh, that sucked, but here we are. But the issue that I'm having here is I don't, to getting back to the confidence in how this, I don't know how it instantaneously or even slowly gets better over the course of the season. That's what really worries me. We can go to Carolina and win next week. We're watching a Dallas team that just puts 30 on everybody.
Yep, they got every weapon.
They're going to be here on Halloween. They're mostly healthy. Their defense makes mistakes sometimes, but Trayvon Diggs, as we were talking about, all he does is pick the ball off. So, you look at the second half of that schedule and such, and I'm really hoping that this was an eye-opening moment and even utilizing the bye can be an opportunity to get things moving. I do want this team to win every game that I watch because I'm a Rube. But I just, what I see as an easier fix is actually the offense. Like I do see whether it's a come to Jesus meeting, quote unquote, or just something where they're going to take the training wheels off. I can see Kirk making a bounce back, and actually, I didn't think Kirk was awful today by any means.
No, I just think he was handcuffed.
He was a little held back today. It felt like, and there was just this slow, methodical movement, and we almost moved our way into the loser circle, and that sucked. I think that can be fixed. I honestly, at this stage of the year, right now, through 5 games, and maybe it's too early, maybe I'm overreacting. I don't know if this defense can be fixed.
Yeah,
because,
well said,
because keeping it close, and I'm just reading some quotes from Zimmer, and he can say 27% on third down. He can say sub 300 yards, and all of that is accurate. But what we still see every day or every week is lapses against the run, And by the way, in concert with the offense, not turning some of those sacks and some of those turnovers into points, that's a problem. But coverage mishaps. You got Bashaud. Every week there's a different Vikings corner using Twitter as a mouthpiece for something stupid.
Yeah. What are they, Pete sauce?
So that's got to, close circuit to Uncle Pete. Just put the phone down. Delete the app.
Yeah.
In this case, it was Bashaud Breeland today. I'm still worried about how that defense gets better. And for a historically strong defensive-minded coach who's now the head coach of this team, and that's been his bread and butter throughout his career, we're now looking at a 2020 that was bad, and we're off to a point now where I believe we're 26th in yards allowed. We're bleeding against the run. The passing game for the most part last couple of weeks by simply a terrible game from Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff just being run-of-the-mill and having to rely on the run. Those weren't blow-up games offensively, but overall, when we're facing Dak and we're facing Rodgers twice in the second half of this schedule, I don't know how this defense improves.
Right.
And that, when you're thinking about, before we talk about making changes or any of this, just in terms of how this collective group gets better right now, I have more faith in the offense jumping back into the fold, but way more so than the defense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this team gave up, 108 rushing yards? I mean, against this team, DeAndre Swift, what are you doing? It's not Barry Sanders. They just, as you said, Nerdo, they give up these chunk plays on third down. And it's just, what? You have to this team, a team like the Lions, and I know I've said that they're coached really well and they don't quit, but a team like this is just looking for an opportunity to go, it's 24-6. We don't want to get hurt. But they don't have that. Every team this goes back, you and all three of us have been watching Vikings football for as long as we remember. They always play down to their competition. Always. And now this Cleveland team is in a rat race right now with the Chargers. It's 35-28. They're marching up and down the field. And it's just the same thing all the time with this team. They don't have the right players. They don't have, you got Darisaw coming in. They march down and score a touchdown. And then Darisaw comes out of the game. Rashad Hill isn't any good. Why is Darisaw? Do you two have any idea why Darisaw wasn't just left in there?
Yeah, no, let's talk about that.
In game shape?
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is. I think this is a slow roll back to full time.
Sure.
You can very easily, and I'm sure there'll be articles and people will post about counting the snaps and saying, okay, when Darisaw was in, the offense had this production. When they scored this many points, when Hill was in, they did this. There may be something to that, right? But at the same time, he is still a rookie who had no snaps in the preseason.
Yeah, good point.
He played on the field goal unit last week. That was it. I mean,
One snap.
So you have a guy who has had no real NFL game speed, game experience. Who maybe Greg said this. Someone said it in the broadcast. Greg or Ben were talking about how you can't jog, you can't run yourself into football shape. It's just different.
Yeah,
you can run 10
point.
miles a day and you're not going to be in football shape or offensive lineman shape because offensive linemen don't need the endurance to run long distances, but they do need their trunks to be strong and their base to be set and all these things that are just unique about that position that you can't get unless you're in there. So I think that there's an opportunity next week that we may see him expand that role, if not go full-time left tackle, and then we can really take a look at what he looks like, what this offense looks like with our first-round pick out there for the first time.
Yeah.
I honestly,
go ahead,
outside of, the offensive line took a step back last week against the Browns, and Kirk was sacked twice today, and I don't have the names in front of me of who sacked him against this team, by the way, with one of the more toothless. The 2020 Vikings had a better pass rush than what these Detroit Lions pushed out there today. And so, but overall,
something called Charles Harris had one of the sacks, and then it's Trey Flowers, right?
Yeah, Trey Flowers.
Yeah, he had the other one. Yeah.
So, okay, well, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Saucy.
Thank you.
What are we doing with? Was it no? It was Ben Ellefson. Ellefson, our fourth tight end, who, by the way, plays. Yeah, well, great question. I think he's a Minnesota kid.
How about the other tight end gets
NDSU, right?
Personal foul, and then Herndon got 2 horrible penalties?
Oh, yeah, and we traded a 4th-round pick for him.
Yeah, way to go.
We're really on a freaking hot streak.
Quit trading draft picks,
just
but whatever.
Reactionary transactions
Panic moves
that are completely backfiring. But Charles Harris. he's matched up on, he leads the team in sacks, only had 3, now he has 4. He's matched up on Ellefson one-on-one, and whatever the play was, it looked like Darrisaw like pushes in with the guard to double the interior, and this Charles Harris cat just blows up Ellefson and takes Kirk down. So, but this offensive line for me, I just want to get back to the kind of the fun where I was trying to go is I'm not necessarily worried about that. Like, I think when this offense is at its most discombobulated, I don't see it just that Kirk is always, trying to have courage under fire. I look at this as just a lack of rhythm in the play calling, the predictability of it in terms of the run pass mix on first and second down. Again, not pushing the ball downfield. These weird where we're sending Thielen out, we're throwing the ball to him, these little screens to the outside, and we want him to make 3-4 guys miss, and we're not getting adequate blockers in front of him. Whatever that fake was today, was that to Amir Abdullah?
I don't know.
The direct snap.
Yeah, let's not do that.
What are we doing?
And so when we're getting creative, it's with some things that I'm just not really a big fan of, and it's easy for me to say that because none of those things are working. So when I'm looking at the offense, and Udo had a bad game against the Browns, Bradbury got blown up against the Browns, who it looks like they have a great defense other than the Chargers just slicing and dicing.
Right.
But I just, again, I think before we do anything with this offense and worry about the number of snaps that Darrisaw is getting or not getting, Rashad Hill's been fine, not elite, not even great, but fine. And it for me funnels back to the play calling mix and how we're directing this offense, which is very problematic. And 2 games in a row, it's been terrible.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Nordo, there's like 8 things going on in here, and I'm glad that I've kept my attention for this long. But
is anybody still at the stadium?
Yeah. I mean, there's,
So set the scene for us.
So the press area is full of people. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So they're writing stories.
Yeah.
Grinding. Yeah.
Captivating and informing.
Yeah,
and AJ's doing something similar here, although it includes some audio from somebody, and it's quite vulgar.
Yeah, it's Chris Hockey at his finest. But I think they're all just waiting for the pizza to show up, hopefully 7th Avenue pizza, but I don't know what it is. We'll come back and talk more about this loss. We'll go around the league because there's a lot happening. I think the Bears just knocked the ball out at the 0-yard line, and it might be something scandalous.
At the 0.
Yeah, something Chris Hockey's very familiar with. Vikings win 19-17 to improve to 2-3. The Lions are 0-5, and Kirk Cousins threw 1 touchdown. We'll talk all about the fun stuff that is the Minnesota Vikings when we come back right here on Overtime. What's happening, sports fans? Your Minnesota Vikings win 19-17 over the Lions. They improved to 2-3. They open up as 1.5-point favorites next week against the Panthers. Nordo, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think given the fact that the Panthers just lost today after starting 3-0, don't have Christian McCaffrey, and now have lost 2 in a row.
Are you mid-pizza?
They're going to want
Are you eating?
Yes.
You've thrown to me every time was first coming out of the gates so far, and I think he thought he had another minute, and you should have seen his eyes.
Get the profile food out of your mouth.
You said Nordo.
Okay, fine. Let's start over.
Hey, I'm back in the game.
Hold on. Let's start over. Max, play that song again. We're starting over. We get redos here. I'm not Corey. I'm not mean. Start the song over, Max, and then let me know. Welcome back. Your Minnesota Vikings win 19-17 to improve to 2-3. They are 1.5-point favorites next week versus the Carolina Panthers. AJ Mansour, your thoughts?
Yeah, big game. Obviously, it's going to be a tough test. You're going to have a good team on offense and defense. Likely going to have Christian McCaffrey back on the field. That doesn't bode well for this defense, who cannot stop the run whatsoever. So if you have Christian McCaffrey in your fantasy team, I would recommend starting him. I'd recommend starting Chuba Hubbard as well. But anyways, they're going to have to prove it. At some point this season, they're going to have to prove if they want to compete and they want to make the playoffs that they can beat a good team. Not a Seattle team that doesn't know who they are and allows tons and tons of yards themselves, or a Detroit team that might go winless the entire season. You need to beat a good team, and Carolina's a good team, right, Nordo?
Yeah, they certainly are. And again, let's as part of looking at what the Panthers have done, they start 3-0 and they lose Christian McCaffrey, which is massive. You mentioned he's probably going to be back. This defense is the real deal, and it goes back to giving props where props is due. Head coach Matt Rule, and I forget who the GM's name is, but really a big thing that they did 2 years ago, they drafted only defenders.
Yeah.
They drafted 8 or 9 guys in the draft 2 years ago, all of them on defense. And many of them have turned out to be fantastic. They've already made the move most recently for Stephon Gilmore. We're not going to have to worry about him. He's on the
But did you see the story this morning that they also tried to get Jalen Smith?
Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, how about that?
And I think now he's in Green Bay. So again, they're building off of what already is good and trying to make it elite. Because I think in some ways the story they're telling there is that this is an offense potentially with or without Christian McCaffrey that may have some limitations. Sam Darnold, we're going to be better at managing the situation around him than the Jets were. He's going to be better, which he has been with the Panthers than he was in New York. But there is a ceiling to that. And so we're just going to go out and have as good a defense as we possibly can, who are first in the NFL right now, third down defense, under 24%. Yards, third in the NFL, third in points allowed. And that's despite a loss today in which they had a nice lead going against the Eagles. And Jalen Hurts brought the Eagles back to get the victory in Carolina, I believe. And so they fall to 3-2. This one matters to them big time. And so that's going to be a team that's motivated and matches up incredibly well against our operation. And so it's not just dust ourselves off. This weird win is the catalyst. Now we're just going to move forward, or it's just Carolina and Sam Darnold. So we're going to go pick them off 4 times and then, moonwalk into the bye. This is actually a pain in the ass game. And if they have Christian McCaffrey back, that only heightens the frustration level that this Vikings team's going to have throughout the week game planning. So this is not a gimme. We should be underdogs in this game. And it would not surprise me if the Panthers a week from now are victorious at home in Charlotte. And then you go into the bye at 2-4, and that's a disaster.
Right. And then you get this Cowboys team that, they play a tough schedule. They're America's team. They're always on prime time. But my God, do they have weapons? They have, as somebody, AJ, that plays fantasy football like you do, they have weapons all over the field. I mean, Tony Pollard would be a starting running back. He would be the bell cow on this Lions team we saw today. He'd be the bell cow on a lot of teams, and they have weapons all over. And defensively, they're pretty good. And we're about to watch a Chicago team. They might squeak out a victory here in Vegas against a team that a lot of people thought in Vegas was one of the best teams in the AFC.
Yeah, the interesting thing with Dallas, and I think, the reason we're seeing them be so competitive and roll some of these teams is for the first time in a while, it doesn't feel like they have bought into their own hype, right? They've had weapons. Dallas has always been a team that draws in free agents. They have weapons on the outside and the inside and the quarterback. But for the first time in a while, it doesn't feel like they have gotten 2 steps ahead of themselves and just were buying Super Bowl tickets before the season even started. This is a good team. They have some swagger. They have some confidence. That might be the toughest game on the schedule. The Packers look pretty tough. There's a lot of tough games. This is probably the point in the show where we remind everybody how the schedule only gets difficult going forward.
The post-bye week schedule is brutal. I mean, the Steelers bounce back today. Everybody's like, why don't they get rid of Big Ben? He played decent. I think he threw 2 or 3 touchdowns. They won, correct?
Yeah, they did. Lopsided.
Yeah, so that was a team that everybody basically said, well, that's the easiest game left on the schedule. There's no easy game on the schedule when you almost lose as 10-point favorites at home to an awful Lions team. How about we... I
will say this, though, to the Cowboys. Their defense, and I know it's glitzy. They got the turnovers from Diggs.
Right.
They're worse in yards allowed per game than the Vikings are. Like this, you can get it against the Cowboys. I mean, but do you think, again, based on what we've seen from this offense over the last 2 weeks, that we could participate in some sort of a shootout and be on the correct side of it? I do not at this stage have any confidence in
No, I
that.
don't either. Let's go around the league. You guys comment as you would like. Falcons 27, Jets 20. Kind of a breakout game for Kyle Pitts. 9 catches, 119 yards, and 1 touchdown. Atlanta's 2-3. The Jets are 1-4.
He was forced to have a breakout game because Calvin Ridley didn't make the trip. Russell Gage
Everyone
is at
else
the
was
other.
hurt.
Yeah, it was basically he was the only option in the passing game. But good to see him. They had high hopes for him. There was everyone in the league had high hopes for him in being one of those like pass catching tight ends, almost like a wide receiver. So maybe this is the launching point for him in the rest of the season.
Well, I'm trying to find it right now. There it is. Okay, perfect. Let's open this window. Okay, it's.
Do you want to have another
Jets and
snack?
Falcons.
Do you want to have another snack break?
No. Okay. Hey, mistakes were made.
No, there are no mistakes on this show. That's why they let us do it.
Cordero Patterson with 7 receptions for 60 yards. He had another 14 carries for 54 yards.
Man, he's so good.
That's under 4 a carry. But overall, what my point is that on a mostly bad team, right? The Falcons probably not playoff bound, but he's getting an opportunity to be a significant part of the offense.
Yeah.
He is absolutely fantastic. Let me see. He's got 4 receiving touchdowns through these games. He's got a rushing TD as well. He's averaging 4.5 a carry on the ground, 13 yards per reception through the air. He has been, in some ways, kind of elevated into a spot that here in Minnesota, we thought that he could get to, but never got to. And I'm just curious, I don't know if we just got bored because he couldn't run routes. We couldn't adapt to one of the most athletic guys in the NFL. We couldn't figure that out as he's gone on to tie the NFL record for kick returns.
He's a Super Bowl winner, man.
Indeed
He's won a Super Bowl. And PA and Jared and I got here early to before the game started, and it was on TV. And they look for him on almost every play. And you said it, AJ, where they had, some guys were kind of banged up, but they look for Cordero on almost every play. And when he went out, when he was in concussion protocol for a little bit, even the announcers are like, this is where you need Cordero. No one would have thought that a few years ago when he was here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So,
and the Vikings aren't the only ones that moved on from him.
Well, yeah.
I think this
Chicago,
is his 5th team.
Was he in Chicago?
Chicago, Oakland, New England.
Yeah.
I mean, he's bounced around. This is not like the Vikings were the only ones that didn't see.
No, you're right.
Or got too frustrated with him.
Well, let me end it like this. I'm just going to say that I really like Cordero.
I do too.
And so I'm happy to see him doing things that he didn't necessarily outside of his rookie season in Minnesota that he didn't really get the opportunity to do. Right. So it makes me a bit nostalgic, especially after watching what I had to endure today. And so props to Cordero on a non-playoff team in Atlanta.
Yeah, how about this? Mason Crosby misses 3 times, but still hits the game winner, a 49-yarder. Packers 25, the Bengals 22. Pretty good if you had the Bengals plus 3.5.
The Packers might have gotten luckier than the Vikings did today.
Oh, yeah. Well, they all missed kicks. It looked like it was going to be a tie.
At one point,
overtime.
they had missed 5 straight kicks in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Steelers 27, Denver 19. Steelers 2-3, Denver 3-2. Big Ben threw 2 touchdowns. Teddy threw 2 touchdowns, but the Steelers bounced back. And everybody thought they were dead. And
I don't think I still don't think that this is like. They were close or they looked, good in other weeks. They looked bad in other weeks. And when you look bad because your quarterback
really
can't throw the ball, doesn't have the arm strength, that's the concern there. We saw it in New Orleans with Drew Brees. It's just you have to adjust, and that is a high-flying offense. And if you can't fly high, I don't know if this is a mirage or.
Speaking of high-flying offense, and the beauty what makes this
the Vikings
station
today.
No, what AJ knows
the
where
Vikings
I'm going.
This season.
What makes this station so good is everybody gets to be crapped on for bad takes. On Friday, during the Charch Challenge, Charch said that the trap of the 5 or 6 quarterbacks he gave out was Tom Brady. He went through this laundry list of how bad Tom Brady is against Miami. He threw 5 touchdowns and 411 yards. I think he threw 3 touchdowns and almost 300 yards in the first half. That's how good they were. And the thing I like about that Tampa team, AJ, because I know you were following it, they never stop.
Yeah, they don't stop.
They were throwing up 21 points.
It's the opposite of Minnesota.
Correct. Thank you.
We got by 10 points, and you go into prevent mode, basically, on offense and defense.
Just bury teams, and that's what Tampa does.
Yes,
correct.
Well, that's not even... That's Tom. I mean, remember the 07 season? Didn't the Patriots beat, maybe it was the Titans or somebody, 59-0? And everybody was kind of pissed off and up in arms, like, okay, at some point, like, you just got to call the dogs off. And even Tom himself is kind of like, well, I mean, we're a professional football team, and we're compensating, like, stop us. Just stop us then. And that's the killer instinct that Tom Brady has, that a lot of high-end offensive operations have, a lot of just generally successful franchises have. Some other franchises don't always show that.
Yep. So. Saints 33, Washington 22. Jameis threw 4 touchdowns. Speaking of fantasy, he's so good in that.
Yeah, but you can't trust him. No, next week he'll throw nothing.
Yeah,
that's a weird situation there. He can put points up, but he's very inconsistent.
The team the Vikings face next week in the Panthers, they lost 21-18 to the Eagles, and Jalen Hurts ran for 2 touchdowns. Sam Darnold 177 and 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. With, if you're watching at home on CBS, is a better line than Derek Carr currently has. Man, what a disaster Chris Hockey is at the Charge Challenge.
Well, you just love it, Saucy, because you aren't the focal point of the laughter this time around. Well, you're actually top of the table or pretty close, aren't you?
No, I think AJ may have taken over. But as you two know, it came down to the last week for me with those guys. So I got real lucky last week, and as you guys know me really well, if I'm the loser of this and I have to walk the 50 miles, it's going to be just hell on earth at the radio station, and no one wants that.
Wait a minute. You don't have to walk 50. How over what period of time?
As long as it takes you.
As long as it takes you.
Leave the site.
Yeah, the site that we're going to do it, you can't leave.
No, that doesn't. You're not walking. You can't physically walk 50 miles, Saucy.
Well, then you better hope I win, because who am I going to bitch to the most?
No, I know. I do. I'm getting a new phone number.
Yeah, you might want to. Tennessee 37, Jacksonville 19. I think Urban Meyer may be the first coach fired. How about this, man? Derrick Henry, 29 carries, 130 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Tennessee is 3-2. Jacksonville is 0-5.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in Jacksonville, right?
Yeah,
on the football field, off the football field. There's also a giant contract. I have no idea what those numbers are, but those contracts to pull a guy, especially from college to the NFL, whether or not he had a job at the time, you're going to have to decide whether or not you just eat that. And
what if you fire him?
If you're better off without them, you fire him, right?
If you fire him, you have to pay him, obviously.
100%.
Right? Yeah. So
unless there's all sorts of nuances in contracts, right?
Yeah.
If you do something that is detrimental or whatever, I'm sure there's something in there that they could, but it's going to be very hard not to pay him off.
Yeah, but if cheating were detrimental, there'd be a whole new list of rules, and I don't think you could fire him for that because it's not illegal. What he did isn't illegal.
Yeah, unless you had some sort of ethical or moral clause.
Yeah, you're right.
You
know more than I would.
Legally. Yeah. I don't have any idea. Let's get your dad on the phone. He's busy with my dad.
How about that? He's at the Red Sox playoff. What did Lawyer Lambert win the lottery? He must have, because he brought Pete Sauce, and you know who's paying for that.
Can you pick? Pete Sauce is the guy that eats the nachos out of the helmet, and then before rinsing it off, just puts it on.
Yeah, of course. Well, let's be honest, I don't think it'd fit. Us Lamberts have huge heads, and Pete Sauce may be the king of the huge heads.
Hey, how about these Jaguars, though? They've now lost, so they won opening day last year.
Right.
And then they finished 1-15. So they lost 15 in a row last year. They've lost the first 5. This is the second longest losing streak in NFL history, and Urban's only got to eat 5 of that so far. But with their schedule, they'll host the Dolphins, so maybe they get their first win there.
That might be. That Dolphins team's horrible.
But they go to Seattle, and I don't care if it's Geno Smith. I don't trust the Jaguars going all the way out to Seattle and getting that win. Then they're hosting the Bills. That's an L.
Seattle's bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, the defense is on pace to give up the most yards in the history of the NFL. But other than that, they're okay, and their quarterback's out. But yeah, they're not a great team. But I mean, they're only 6 L's away from, I think, matching, and I forget what year it is, but the Bucs, over the course of maybe a couple years, definitely a couple years.
Had to be, yeah.
They lost 26 consecutive.
Wow.
And so they're entering that conversation of being the most destitute franchise in the history of the NFL. Don't fire Urban Meyer. Let him sit there and wear some of that.
Yeah, good point.
If you're, I mean, you want them to win every game if you're Shad Khan, of course. But just let Urban sit in his mess and figure out how to fix it.
What soccer team does he own, Nordo?
That's a good question. It's one of those European ones.
By the way, there's just a slugfest going on in L.A.
Can't believe it.
The Chargers scored again. It's about to be 42-42. I hope you took the over in that. Lastly, New England 25, the Texans 22. New England's not a good football team, but how about Davis Mills and the loss? 312 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's sweet. You know, the Patriots were down in that game for a large part of it and stormed back. And Davis Mills and the Texans don't appear as if they have massive January and February aspirations. But
by the way, he missed the extra point.
You're kidding.
The Charger guy missed the extra point. Yeah,
to tie it at 42.
To tie it at 42. He missed it. Yeah. Excuse me.
Hey, real quick.
Go ahead.
Before we move off of that game, there was a report earlier this morning that the Texans might be opening up the opportunity to potentially trade Deshaun Watson.
Sure.
Any idea where a landing spot for that
isn't
might
it
be?
Miami?
Is there a leader in the club? Yeah.
I think it's Miami, but so this is the question, and I don't know if any of us know the answer to it, but I'll just ask it. Is he not allowed to play, or is that the Texans' choice?
Well, he's on the active roster.
So he could play.
Right now, yes.
Deshaun Watson said that he would never play for them again, and they are just putting him on the active roster and then just making him inactive every week.
Yeah.
That's all they're doing. Now, but the thing is for me, and I want to know, I mean, there has to be some legitimacy to something within the 21 or 22 civil sexual harassment suits against him.
Right.
Like, how could you potentially give up significant future draft equity when that thing comes down to pass? And I think like affidavits and testimony and depositions and things are going to start like either later or next month or somewhere within the next 6 months. We're going to start learning actually what's being said and what the accusations and how all of that thing falls. I don't know if any of it results in criminal or if it's just civil stuff at this point. I have no idea. But how could you potentially give up like 2 first-round picks? Are you going to give 2 or 3 first-round picks and a potential starter?
Right.
For that great unknown? I mean, that's a hefty price tag on a guy that maybe you don't want representing your franchise in the first place when all of this comes to light. Like you're treading in really dangerous waters with Deshaun, who is a great quarterback, and we need to find out what the hell's going on off the field to know whether he's a great person or maybe somebody that we wouldn't want in the mix. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well said.
We just had a brawl in Dallas, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
The Dallas-New York game, there was just a brawl. Kadarius Toney.
He's a stud.
He's having a great game. He's about to get kicked out of the game.
Is he really? Why did he throw?
He threw a punch.
Oh, of course.
And a flag was thrown. They're sorting all this out. It will likely be just the one penalty, but yeah, what a dumb move.
Yeah,
that guy just earned himself a starting roster spot no matter when Sterling Shepard and Galladay come back. But yeah,
can we get Chris Hockey's help in terms of figuring out what Joe Judge was just saying on TV?
Bit, by the way. That's a brilliant bit. Yeah, Hockey's so funny.
Oh man.
So let me ask. So let's just bring this up quickly. I know we're talking football, and this is obviously football. Here go the Browns again. They're up 1 with 2:55 left, and they're throwing the football with those 2 running backs.
Yeah.
What are they doing? I don't get Stefanski tried to do it last week and it didn't work. I get it, but you have the 2 best running backs in football, the best tandem, and that's what you're doing. It's stupid. As you said, the Cowboys are up 34-13 on the Giants. I think, did he get kicked out?
He better. I mean, I talk about how even more dumb you could get. A solid fist punch straight to the helmet.
Yeah, you're going to break your hand.
You're going to be the one hurt there.
Yeah,
Just
not smart.
Dumb.
Yeah, that's
Cardinals
10, 49ers 7. Those are all the games going on.
Who was he throwing a punch to?
This Kazi, number 18 right there.
Oh, okay. J-Ron Curse is in the mix.
Wow.
Look at J-Ron.
Nice to hear from J-Ron Curse
Remember when J-Ron got in trouble and it turned out he was driving like a $400,000 Bentley and his salary was like $275?
That didn't work out well.
No, it didn't.
I'll tell you this, a moment of humanity when
the lights just went out here. Hold on.
Daniel Jones got basically knocked out at the goal line and he got up and started stumbling, J-Ron helped Daniel Jones to the trainer. It was a very nice gesture by J-Ron. I like J-Ron.
Yeah, I do too.
But he just got so loud on Twitter when things weren't going his way.
That seems to be the thing. We can't read what Breland tweeted today, but what are you doing?
Check it out on the website.
Yeah, why? Yeah, correct. Why would
so he got called on a PI, and I think the PI
it was terrible. It was an uncatchable ball.
You could have called it on a hold, but it was uncatchable at least when he was making the contact. So maybe it's a hold. It's 5 yards. They call the PI, and you were there, Saucy. The crowd erupts in boos. And I don't even think most of the boos were necessarily directed at Bashad, but then Bashad's like egging on the crowd.
That was weird.
And so he's been much maligned since he's been here, and some of it's for really good reason because he gets lost in coverage a lot, and he's part of, talking about that defense needing to get better and being not sure that it can. But what's he doing? Talking about putting,
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Ron's last name, that whole bit that Corey did. We'll break. We'll come back for our final segment. We'll have some final thoughts from both Nordo and AJ. AJ has a ton of stuff up on KFAN.com, including something super funny that Hockey and him put together. All that more. The final segment of Vikings Overtime, and we'll give you some updates on the games in the afternoon that will probably be finished up by the time I walk us to break here. It's Vikings Overtime right here on the
54-yard try left hash. Snap. Spot. Joseph. Excellent leg. Get up there. And yes! It is good! And the Minnesota Vikings have defeated the Detroit Lions 19-17. Greg Joseph, you're the man!
That ends up as the game winner, as PA called it. Your Minnesota Vikings win 19-17. AJ and Nordo are back there. Nordo, is it okay if I go to you, or are you having another profile bar?
Hey, I'm here, man.
When they went for two and got it with a play that looked like it was just like a schoolyard play where just throw it to the guy who's open, basically. It didn't look like it was a set play. All of us thought that was the end of the game, right?
Yeah, I thought it was over. It was absolutely in that moment where I locked eyes with Abbott behind me. You were there. I'm looking at Pete Bursich and all of that. And I looked over because we are next to the assistant coach's booth, and not a lot of happy campers. A lot of very quiet, might you say, brooding looks from a group of coaches that, we're in an awful spot as they conceded the lead. And that was kind of my God, we're actually going to lose this game.
Yep.
And we're actually going to have to sweat, or I'm sure there are some out there that would be celebrating it, but the idea of a potential coaching change happening in the next so many hours, or would it happen on Monday? And what's the just picture, fan line in a victory, the way the game looked, kind of tells the story of how frustrated and fed up Vikings fans are, and they're completely validated and justified in being that way. So, as we saw that 2-point conversion hit, it was like, oh, bleep, here it is. Zimmer's gone. Season's dead. 1-4. Winless team walks in and wipes our face, wipes the turf with our faces. And that it was Kirk Cousins passing the ball, making plays that brought us back from the dead to get us the victory. So in that regard, I was happy with how Kirk handled himself in the clutch moments of the game. Greg Joseph, left the 49-yarder short, which is weird after he was nails from 55.
Yeah, he kicked that different.
Yeah,
It was different.
Correct.
But he's good from 54, and we got out alive. So here we are.
Yep, and AJ, I know you made a couple of cool bits for KFN.com, but do you know what was fully said during the exchange with Kirk and head coach Mike Zimmer?
Yeah, I do. And, we've seen Zimmer on Hard Knocks before. I can't repeat it, but
of course.
As I'm speaking, here, let me click, one more click. Let's throw it here. I'm going to tweet it from the Power Trip page and the KFN page. I didn't know this, but Kirk Cousins was mic'd up during that sideline altercation with Zimmer, that altercation, celebration, whatever you want to call it. So you can hear exactly what they said to each other. I just threw it up on the Vikings blog, the Power Trip page. So
nice find.
It's on the Twitters as well if you want to see it. Some interesting comments between Kirk and Mike Zimmer. And I think that you guys tomorrow morning on the Power Trip are going to have a lot to talk about with this sideline altercation, Paul.
Yeah, I can't wait. That's 5:30 to 9. Nordo, what do you guys have tomorrow?
It's going to be living on a prayer type of montage here. I still got to nail that down because, again, emotionally, I'm down, but I should be up. You know what I mean? Team won,
correct.
But I don't feel great about it. I feel terrible about it, as a matter of fact. So I don't like what I'm feeling inside right now. It'll be a montage of some sort, maybe calls in the mix, and try and break this thing down. Again, the focus of what exactly is taking place offensively, the defense potentially being broken and kind of looks mildly unfixable, at least through 5 games, and really the standing the test of time moving forward. Lavelle might be in the mix as well. We got playoff baseball and stuff like that going on, but it's going to be heavy on the purple and trying to figure out just what in the hell is going on with this team.
So as we go forward, AJ, and you and Nordo and I have done this every time we've done overtime where we go through the upcoming schedule. I mean, they are 1.5-point favorites next week. That might change, but the after the bye week is just it's a murderer's row of really good teams. I mean, the Cowboys, the Giants, this is a blowout. The Giants have just scored garbage points, but this Dallas team is going to be 4-1. I don't know who they play next week, but they will probably be favorited, so we might see a 5-1 Dallas team come in here on Halloween, of course, Sunday Night Football. And then you got to go to Baltimore, you got to go to both coasts, you go all over the place. If this team next week is an absolute must win for this team if they want to be serious.
Yeah, I mean, you need to get some momentum going into the bye because coming out of the bye, this team traditionally does not have any momentum.
It looks like Dallas has the bye the same weekend, so they're going to be coming out on Halloween fresh as well because they're at Foxborough next weekend.
Right? Oh, yeah.
And then they have the following week off, so they have a bye week.
Hopefully they suffer from the same trials that we do with bye weeks.
I don't know. There's not a lot they're suffering. Again, we're seeing as the Giants are, racking up a couple of garbage time yards.
Did you see the way Barkley got hurt?
Yeah.
Yeah, he stepped on somebody's foot.
Have you seen the picture online?
It's gross.
It's really gross.
There's a baseball-sized knot.
Did you also see that the Chargers scored another touchdown?
Oh, did they really?
And they now have a 5-point lead.
47-42.
Austin Eckler's third of the day.
Of course.
Is he facing him in fantasy?
Man, he's really good.
He's really
good. That
good.
guy's a stud. And that LA Chargers team is really good. But that game, I think the turning point of the season, it'll most likely be next week. But if they somehow can get a win, they on paper may be a better team. But that Dallas game is just going to show how this is going to go. If this is a blowout here in front of these fans, where the last game that was at this stadium, they barely beat the Lions, and then you come in here and maybe get rolled over by this Dallas team that's just full of studs at every position, it could be bad.
Yeah, I mean, when we beat them 2 years ago in 2019, kind of part of that story is we were able to meet them in a spot where Ezekiel Elliott just wasn't himself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And frankly, he wasn't a factor. And I think we were missing, I think it was Linval. He was out that game, and Armon Watts was a rookie in 2019, had the game of his life. There was an awesome 4th down play by Eric Kendricks. Rudy had 2 touchdowns. Like, that was a grinder of a game, and we got out alive. This time, I'm curious where the stops come from, and it just kind of boils down to the lack of meshing with our team. And we shouldn't look past, as we're looking at Dallas out of the bye, we shouldn't look past Carolina either. And it's going to be the same story into this next weekend against the Panthers as we break it down throughout the week, where first 2 weeks, it's like the offense is cooking, but how do we figure out these coverage lapses defensively? The last couple of weeks, we're holding those points down. Technically, we had an opportunity to beat both the Browns, and we did get out alive against the Lions, but what's happening now with the offense? Like there's just... We haven't seen, all systems go, just true, competent, consistent execution. And that kind of speaks to really what we've been watching for the last half decade, if we're being honest with ourselves. Every year we're down. The next year we're a playoff team. Then we're a non-playoff team. This aspect of the team is really good for a stretch while the other lapses, and then they flip-flop. I think there's the overall defining word of the Minnesota Vikings as a franchise that exists in this league is inconsistent, which leads you to being a fringe playoff team every other year, and it leads you to high expectations and low output. Right. And so I don't even care about that Dallas game in 3 weeks. It's going to be sweet. It's Halloween. It's going to be spooky and going to be pretty cool. This next week, I'm just wondering at this stage how we can stop DJ Moore and how we can stop, I assume, will be a rejuvenated and in the lineup Christian McCaffrey.
I think you are correct.
Paul, I want you to head to Twitter real quick, and I'm going to interrupt and go back to that Chargers-Browns game.
Yeah.
The way that they scored, the Chargers had the ball on like the 2-yard line, a minute and a half left. They're down by 1. And Austin Eckler's kind of wasting time. I'm going to play it for Nordo here. Yeah. Wasting time. And about 8 Browns players carried him into the end zone to guarantee that they would at least get the ball back and have a try to tie the game, which they're attempting to do right now. That is the out-of-the-box, new age thinking that Kevin Stefanski and these other coaches have that we want from Mike Zimmer.
Yeah,
that's
correct.
Maybe they would have done that too, or just opened up the gates and let him go through. But how smart is that? And for fantasy football players that maybe are going against Eckler, how frustrating.
Did the Browns not have any timeouts? And that was first and goal?
Well, whatever it was first and goal from like the 2-yard line. So they're either going to kick a game-winning field goal,
they
had no timeouts left.
Okay, so if the Browns had no timeouts left, then why don't you just kneel on it and kick?
They should have.
Yeah, 100%.
And it looks like they were kind of doing that without doing that, but then he got grabbed by about 8 Browns and carried into the end zone.
So I'm with you that it's a smart play, and it looks like the Chargers just got the ball back, so the game's probably over.
Right.
Looks like it,
But the Chargers should have handled it better.
Yeah, you're right. I don't. Why wouldn't you just kneel on it?
Right.
Yeah,
I don't really get it.
AJ, what's on KFAN.com?
Well, that mic'd up Kirk Cousins, Mike Zimmer audio of their celebration on the sideline is there. You got the PA looking to be vindicated with another game-winning field goal call. Did he get it right? You can check it out at KFAN.com.
Nordo, I already asked you what you have tomorrow, but tell me again because I wasn't listening.
Yeah, it's okay. I assume Lavelle's in the mix. Weekly guest, 9 to noon. We can break down the game. We can break down MLB playoffs. It's going to be Vikings montage and a ton on the purple and gold throughout at least the first half of the show as we celebrate a win, but then wrap our heads around exactly how it unfolded.
Vikings win 19-17 on a 54-yard Greg Joseph field goal. They take on Carolina next week, noon. Pregame at 10. All kinds of great stuff this week on the Minnesota Vikings. Power Trip tomorrow, 5:30 to 9 right here on The Fan. Thank you to Max. Thank you to AJ. And thank you to Nordo. Bye.